What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your good friend Rafa Spars. I want to thank you guys for joining us on a very special episode of Grappling Hour. You know, the funniest part about looking out and seeing the many people who are involved in this sport is people have different talents, and sometimes you don't always know what those talents are. For example, our guest today is somebody who I watched. One of the very first videos I saw was from this man, and it was a warm and welcoming voice that told me I could do Jiu-Jitsu. And I've always wanted to interview him. And I think circumstantially, here we are for whatever reason doing this interview. But I want to thank him for his time here today because we have something very important to talk about. I want to welcome our guest, Mr. Stephan Kesting. Stephan, how are you doing, sir?
Very well. It's so nice to be here. So nice to make contact in person. And hello to all your viewers and listeners.
You know, like I said, I really wish the circumstances were a little bit different and that we could be, trading talk over technique. Because you've been
in the future. In the future,
you know, it's a good first meeting. But I read an article from you that you put out in regards to coronavirus, and I thought it was so clear and so precise in terms of articulating an argument as to maybe why we should be changing the ways that we approach keeping schools open or even training. Do you mind making that case for us right now?
Not at all. Obviously, there's a lot of panic and there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of good information too. And I come at this from kind of three different places. Right now, for the people who are watching, I'm in a fire department uniform because in addition to being a jiu-jitsu black belt, in addition to having to train for 40 years in martial arts, I'm also a first responder. I've been a firefighter for 20 years. And I also have a couple of degrees in biology. So I think I'm not an expert in epidemiology, I'm not an expert in virology, but I think the general scientific background allows me to filter some of the information, and basically give it a sniff test. Does this seem to make sense? Is this, is this really, hang on, I just need to listen to that. No, okay. What you hear in the background there is a call for a different hall. So I apologize in advance. I may need to run off. The call that came in right before this was a Corona call.
Oh God, the call that was right before where we were.
Not for our crew, but for another crew. So
okay, and I just want to point out before you continue on your point, seeing you dressed up like this makes me realize how many jobs I don't have in addition to doing this, because you do this and much more. But go on, sir.
Yeah, well, the job that I don't do a very good job of is sleeping. So maybe that's maybe that's how I get it done. So my basic point is that right now it's completely irresponsible to be training. It's completely irresponsible to be, if you've got a martial arts school, to keep it open. I think if we take a look at, people are comparing this to the flu, and we can talk about that. People are saying, yeah, but that happened in those other countries, and we can talk about that. People are saying, well, as long as you just wash your hands, you're fine, and we can talk about that. The bottom line is there's a whole lot of stuff we don't know, but there is a whole bunch of stuff that we do know. So to take it out of the scientific realm and put it in the anecdotal realm, I have friends who live in Italy, and I have friends who still have family living in Iran. And I can guarantee you that in those countries, it's complete, absolute bedlam. It's complete, absolute chaos. And so right now, the best of the science says that depending on how much social distancing we do, depending on what kind of measures we put into action, somewhere between 30 and 70% of all of us are going to get this damn thing. So for very rough numbers, we'll say half of us are going to get this coronavirus thing. So then it leads to a certain kind of fatalism. Well, we're all going to get it, so why are we even bothering? And that brings us to maybe the most important concept that I want to drive home today, which is this idea of flattening the curve. It's a very active trending hashtag on Twitter. I think in terms of scientific knowledge that's percolated down into society, this idea of flattening the curve has really made big gains. But for people who don't know what that means or don't have a sense of it, let's just say that there are, for easy math, there's 400,000 people in Canada and the States. I know it's a bit less than that, but we'll say it's 400,000. And let's, for easy math, say that half of us are going to get it, 200 million. And let's say that somewhere between 1 and 10% of us are going to be afflicted by it very seriously. If all of us who are going to get it very seriously end up in hospital at the same time, the hospital system is completely, I'm trying to think of a polite word, buggered, I would say. It's another word came to mind.
We
It begins with an F.
we have very different ways of approaching that, but I think it belabors the point.
Yeah. Um, so, given that we're a huge number of people, according to the best data that we have, are going to get this by flat. If all of us go into the hospital in the next month, it's a very steep curve, right? A whole bunch of people are going to get it, and then it's going to go down. Whereas if we can spread this out so that the healthcare system can sort of deal with it, if instead of 1,000 people going into the ER every hour, if it's 10 people going into the ER every hour, then that's a much better thing. It also gives the system time to catch up in terms of developing tests. We're woefully under-equipped in North America for testing. Not everyone who needs a test can get one. It's probably not going to be the case for another month or two. In the fire department, we're being told, it might be a very long wait for a test if you need one. It's going to give time for the antiviral medications to get better. There's hundreds and hundreds of clinical tests or clinical trials going on right now, many in China, but also not just in China. All these things are being expedited. I don't know how many scientists are working on this, scientists and epidemiologists. I'll throw a number out there. 100,000 of them, say, are working on this. There's an intense effort. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a much better understanding of this, and in a couple of months, we'll probably have much better treatment options for this. There's no evidence that this goes away in warmer weather. There's all kinds of speculation. There's not any solid evidence that I'm aware of. So I think for now, it's best to assume that it's going to roll on through the summer. But who knows? Maybe some kind of antiviral drug treatment will come out in a year to a year and a half, is the best numbers I've heard for a vaccine. If you can hold off, if it is seasonal, if you can hold off for this season, maybe there'll be something by next flu season. If we can flatten the curve by taking all the possible measures to stop a whole bunch of people getting it at the same time, this is a very good thing. And one of the primary ways that we can do it is by increasing social distancing. And that means that, unfortunately, I love jiu-jitsu. I've been doing jiu-jitsu informally since the late 80s, formally since the early 90s. I got my jiu-jitsu black belt in 2006. That's 14 years ago. Pretty clearly, I'm heavily invested in jiu-jitsu. I've got a couple thousand YouTube videos out there, which is probably how you found me, on jiu-jitsu, right? Did you find me through a YouTube video?
Absolutely.
Okay. I love doing it. I love being the evangelist for it. I have a financial interest, a vested interest in the health of the sport. I have many, many friends who make their living with this. And right now, I'm pretty much trying to destroy that all by getting the message out, saying, for the love of God, shut your schools now and be on the right side of history. There are some things that you can do to make that less onerous. And maybe we can, if we have time, if we don't run out of time, we can talk about how a school can maybe survive this. Obviously, if this goes on for a couple of years, it's a really bad situation if you're a school owner.
Absolutely.
But if this is a couple of months, there may be ways you can pull through it, because there's really no better way to spread this virus other than perhaps group sex. Like if you had
Don't
10
challenge
people on
them.
the
They
mat.
might do that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if we get into some apocalyptic end of the world group sex, I'm not qualified to speak about that yet. Maybe I'll be expert on. Maybe I'll make as opposed to just having this page on my site, COVID-19 and BJJ.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have like COVID-19 and end of the world sex.
Absolutely. I've been laughing because I felt that for everybody who seems to entertain the idea of a flat Earth, it's really hard for them to get around a flat curve theory in terms of like flattening this out.
Yeah.
I want to bring this up because I think you're transitioning to a good point where I really want to get to, which is it seems there are some prevailing different thoughts on this. The first of which being, I'm young enough, I'm healthy enough, this doesn't affect me. So if I go to continue training, then it's really not going to, affect me because the numbers game seems to be pretty much in my favor since I work out.
Sure.
Why is that not such a prevailing smart idea.
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, young people have died from this. People in their 30s and 40s have definitely died from this. So you're not completely safe, and that's more from a selfish point of view. Secondly, one huge problem with this is that COVID and coronavirus, when you get it, say you get infected today, you walk by some 20-year-old guy who's training, who just came from class, he's got it, he doesn't know he has it, and you get infected today, you're probably only going to get sick in something like 10 to 14 days. I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but you're going to be infectious. Unlike many other viruses, you're going to be infectious before you actually start coughing, before you get a fever, before you start sniffling, before your throat gets sore. So you're going to have, we don't know the exact length of time, but let's say 4 or 5 days where you could be giving it to people and passing it on. This whole idea of like, they're screening right now. They're doing a couple of screening tests. Have you traveled outside of the country? Have you interacted with anyone from Wuhan? Do you have a sniffle or a cold or a fever? And those are good questions to ask. Like, if the answer to those is yes, you're definitely at high risk. But if the answer to those is no, it doesn't mean that you're at no risk. So you become infectious. Do you have parents? Do you have grandparents? Do you know anyone who's a diabetic? Do you know anyone who's overweight? Do you know anyone who's in ill health? Do you know anyone who's had an organ transplant, like I have? Do you know anyone who has HIV, like I don't have? Anyone who's immunocompromised or is sick or has a respiratory problem already or has asthma or has bronchitis, you could kill them. You might be fine, but you could literally be directly responsible for the death of somebody else. And then thirdly, there's that whole thing about flattening the curve, right? If you're young and you want to train, I get it. It really sucks. I love training. In fact, I love training for much longer than that 20-year-old guy. If I'm speaking to some 20-year-old kid, I've been doing this since I was 12. Obviously, I love doing it. I get it. But if we don't, as a society, distance ourselves, and that means not going to class, it means closing your schools, that means not training in the conventional way, for a while, we can't flatten this curve. And that means we're going to overwhelm the medical system. And on a selfish note, it means when you break your arm because of a takedown gone bad, like I have, or if you break your foot in a takedown gone bad, like I have, or if you have any number of injuries, like I have, there's not going to be a medical system there for you. Like if you listen to what's happening in Italy, they've got one ventilator and they've got 3 patients who need that ventilator. The doctors have to decide who gets it. Oh, he's 60, she's 70, and this guy's 30. We're going to give it to the 30-year-old, and 2 people are going to die. It's like the ultimate moral question that they always talk about in philosophy class, the fat man, right? There's a runaway train. It's going to kill 5 people down the tracks, but if you throw a fat guy in front of the train, you'll kill him, but the 5 people will live. It's all theoretical. It's all well and good to argue about this, but in Italy, they're actually having to do this calculus in real life, and there are people dying because they have a very steep curve. And so, I mean, don't be a douchebag and don't train. Like, don't train for a couple of weeks, and then we'll have more information.
And if that fat man is Steven Seagal, I mean, they're not going to pick you. They're going to pick Steven Seagal and keep him alive because he keeps martial arts alive. I mean, here's the hardest part for me. I, like you, share a passion for grappling and for training, and it is killing me not to train. But I can't, under any circumstance, come up with a reason other than me being selfish and wanting to stay fit than to go. I want to transition.
You can still stay fit. You can still stay fit, and you can probably still improve certain aspects of your game during this time. Like, it's a good time. It would have been hard to continue training during the Black Plague. But fortunately, we have this thing called the internet now. We've got these things called instructionals. We've got YouTube. We've got apps and stuff. So, of course, it's not the same as training.
Well, that has been one of the goals of what we're going to be trying to do, and I hope people who watch this will reach out to me, but we want to make it so that if people have instructionals or there are professors who would be shutting down their gyms, that we can go ahead and provide links to some of that work so that people can be solo drilling or watching things and continuing to keep their training up. But I wanted to actually do a transition to the gym situations because we've talked about it on the personal level. I want to talk about the gym ownership level. And one of the things that I understand the difficulty of doing that, but I also have gotten emails and seen postings from a number of gyms that say, don't worry, guys, we're taking every precaution to go ahead and wipe things down for sure this time. And it makes me think, were we not doing that before? And the hard part is that
I don't know how this ringworm got into the school.
And it's so hard for me I don't want to make light of those individuals per se, but I do want to bring light to the idea that it may not be enough for something that can be transposed between air, and that the studies are not 100% concrete in terms of how do we prevent it for ourselves. I just think that there is a very difficult discussion that is raging on. And there seems to be two sides of this that I've heard so far from people. One, keep your gym open and go as normal, but take every precaution to make it safe because you want to keep things normal. And if everybody's going to get it, they might as well just get it now.
No.
And two, which is the shutdown system. And to that credit, I have the utmost respect for Keenan, who I think was one of the first people to really shut down his gym. And to me, I thought that was such a huge decision because we have lots of influencers in this sport. And I feel like him taking the lead on that made it a little bit easier for people to go, oh, you know what? If one of the top of our sport is doing it, maybe we should listen.
Yeah. And then shortly followed by Marcelo Garcia. Yep. And then Atos, I think it was yesterday.
Yes.
I think Henzo's, which is ironic given that sort of one of the top students from there, I'll say the name, Gary Tonin, is quite verbal in his refusal to shut down. But in his defense, that was his opinion 2-3 days ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is an emerging thing, and I have some faith that as better science is coming forward and better information is coming forward and public pressure is coming forward, that some of the people who were like at first like, hey, we're just going to wipe everything down, today are going, man, should I close? Yeah. And I think it's just gotten a little bit easier. I'll tell a story. So a lot of gym owners that I know are basically functioning on the verge of bankruptcy, right? They can maybe make it through a month without income, but they can't make it through 2. So for them, it's not a question of financial difficulty. It's a question of financial catastrophe or bankruptcy, right? So there's a pretty heavy stigma associated with that. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen. It might happen, right? But it's too soon to say. So a friend of mine who's he owes money to different, he owes money in taxes, he owes money to his landlords, he owes money to basically the workers' compensation board. He's paying all these things off, and he was doing a good job of it. But today he made a bunch of phone calls, and basically out of the 4 agencies he talked to, 3 of them were like, "We totally get it. We understand. Pay what you can, essentially, or make us an offer."
Yep.
Now, it's not out of the woods, but there are people willing to be flexible here. If you owe taxes, you can. I don't know what country people are listening to this in. Probably mostly the States and Canada. But if you're in Argentina or Uruguay and you owe taxes to the government, there's a chance you can wiggle out of some of those taxes or defer them or delay them for now. If your landlord is a mall, you're not the only person who's in danger of shuttering their doors and going out of business. And if that landlord loses all of his tenants, he's screwed too.
Yep.
So that's actually one of my suggestions, is that immediately start negotiating with your creditors. Let them know that you're going through a tough time. You're a service-based industry. Have you heard of this thing called coronavirus? I've had half my students drop out. And, defer and delay as much as you can, because you're going to need cash. And hopefully, we don't know, but hopefully this will blow over. Another important thing is actually asking your students to support you. I see a lot of people posting online. Actually, I saw a couple things this morning people posting, Just have a second here, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
We're taking a second. He is on call right now, so there's
I will call him back. I'll call him back in a second.
possibility he may be having to go. But
sorry, no, I think I can delay. I am on duty right now. I can delay for a few minutes. Ask your students to continue supporting you during this time of crisis. And you can word it as, if you want a place to come back to when this blows over, please support us now. And then you can incentivize this in different ways. You can say, like, look, if you miss a month of classes, we'll give you a free month at the end of your contract or sometime in the next year, not all at the same time, because we don't want you to get, we can incentivize this by you and another school owner can trade free seminars. Right? If there's somebody 2 hours away who's a big name, you can say, hey, look, you and me band together, and to incentivize our students to stay, I'll teach a free seminar at your place, you teach a free seminar at my place. Stuff like that. Finding some way to do Zoom or Skype or Instagram live sessions with your students. It's obviously a little bit easier to teach kickboxing. Okay, everyone, kind of like a kickboxing size, jab, cross, hook, flying knee. All right, that was one. Okay, second rep. That's a little bit easier with kickboxing, a little bit harder with grappling.
At a certain point, your dog's probably going to get a little mad that they're getting all the moves tried out on them.
Exactly. But, that's one way to handle it. And I think there's going to be a lot of debt relief type programs coming our way. It depends on the country and the state, of course, and the province and whatever. But, obviously a lot of people are going to be affected by this, and a lot of business is going to be shutting down or in danger of shutting down.
All right, this is all doom and gloom. This is nerve-wracking for a number of reasons. It makes it seem like, we're talking about 2 weeks, like a 2-week break. But we're anticipating this is going to be a problem for longer than that. So, how do you see us navigating this past that 2 weeks? Because we're talking about actual adjustments to the way that we carry ourselves and the way that we train.
It's hard to say. Maybe in a couple of months when you can go to the drugstore and get corona test swabs, at home kits. Here's the pregnancy kit and here's the corona kit. Yeah. You can make people do a test before they get to step on the mat. We don't know. Yeah. Maybe there'll be clubs that are corona only, right? Like if you have corona, you can't train here unless you have corona. That's what's happening in Italy. Yeah. We laugh, but that's what's happening in Italy.
That's true.
Large parts of the hospital, all the doctors, all the nurses, all the care aides, all the caretakers, they already have coronavirus. And they're assuming that the only person coming into that section of the hospital are corona patients. Yeah. So they're sick and they're continuing to work. In the fire department, we're beginning to talk about having like corona crews and not corona crews. Corona calls, corona halls for corona calls. Mm. And then clean halls for non-corona. It hasn't happened, but we're talking about it. It's not inconceivable that we'll have corona grappling clubs. That's a wild prediction. I don't really know if that's going to happen. It's too soon to tell. But for now, the sensible thing to do is to stop training, close your school, flatten the curve, don't kill your grandmother, don't kill your asthmatic neighbor, don't kill your training partner's immunocompromised baby daughter. Right? It really does come down to that. Yeah. This thing is at least 10 times deadlier than the flu. And even the most conservative numbers, like there was a guy on the Sam Harris podcast. Sam Harris?
Yeah,
Making Sense. You listen to Sam Harris had 2 podcasts on that. The first guy was more doom and gloom, and the second guy was more trying to calm everyone down, And he'd appeared on Fox News, so he's not going to be an extremist, the sky is falling guy. But at the end of the podcast, they go with his most conservative numbers. It still comes down to 800,000 dead Americans in the next year. Yeah. So that's a lot of dead Americans. Yeah. It's unfortunate that people die here kind of in a flu-like way. If it was Ebola, or if they just blew up in a cloud of mist and splattered blood everywhere, we'd be paying this a whole lot more attention because it'd be more dramatic. So, look at what's happening in Italy. Look at what's happening in Iran. Look at what's happening in China. Oh, but infection rates are going down in China. Yeah. And they've invoked the most draconian anti-human rights crackdown, health quarantine in history. Like, you cross this line, you get shot,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're old and you don't have any food in your apartment and you're quarantined? Oh, that's too bad. Let me know how that works out for you. We don't do that. Thus, we're not going to be even as effective as China.
Yeah.
Also, there's only a couple thousand cases in the US. Yeah, wait till they start testing for it.
Yeah.
It's like, I think if we do this social distancing stuff right and buy us some time to get the medicine right, it may not be as dramatic. We're going to slow down the spread of the virus. We effectively, for those virologists or epidemiologists among us, they already know this. We're decreasing the R naught value, which you're going to start hearing more about. So there's hope, but just do the right thing. It's real simple. Do the right thing. Don't kill your grandmother, and don't kill your training partner's immunocompromised daughter that you didn't know he had.
Well said. Again, I really wish this was a different circumstance that brought us together, but I'm so glad that we were able to make our first meeting one that I hope has something that resonates with the people who are watching it. And yes, you and I are people who are probably going to end up getting back on the mats, but we have to also be cautious about how we do it. And I think that there's nothing wrong with being smart about it. And like I've told people, I'm like, listen, these 2 weeks that I've kind of just said I'm going to do what I do, and I'm working on a show at NBC, and NBC as a whole said no shows. And I said, okay, then for those 2 weeks, it would seem like, yay, vacation, snow day kind of a thing.
You have more time not to train.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it's going to be tough. And I hope that we can use
You can
that.
still run.
Yeah.
You can buy a kettlebell and then disinfect it and go to town. People stayed in shape long before there were gyms.
I got to be honest with you. I did jiu-jitsu because I hate all that stuff, but I think I'm going to find the time. The one thing that I've looked at is yoga for BJJ, and
sure.
I've been looking at stuff like that. Plus, you've got thousands of instructionals and YouTube videos that people can look at. And I know you can't say that, but I can, because I want to make sure that people are not feeling this as a death sentence. It's a self-preservation.
It's a delay.
You know what I mean?
Getting your jiu-jitsu black belt is roughly a 10-year endeavor. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to stop at the water station on a marathon. You're going to have to take a couple of weeks off from training. Yeah. I know it sucks, but it's going to happen anyway. You're going to turn your ankle and not be able to train. Your mother-in-law is going to get sick and you have to spend all day at the hospital and you're not going to be able to train. You're going to have a kid and that'll ruin your life and you won't be able to train. Martial arts is about discipline, and sometimes it takes discipline to not do the thing that you want to do. So, well, I need to run.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. We will have a much better discussion, I'm sure, in the future for something a little bit more fun and technique-wise, because we'd always love to have you on. But thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephan Kesting, everybody.
Take care, guys. Good luck.
Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with one Stephan Kesting. It was, I always wanted to interview him. It would have been nice if it was for different reasons. One of the things that we're going to look to do on this show while we are combating this virus is we're going to try and spread the word of those folks who are doing the right thing, but who also are part of our community that we want to go ahead and take care of. And so each day we're going to try and put a little bit of a spotlight on those individuals who have products, goods, services that you can go ahead and support. Because here's the thing, guys. Some of these guys are closing down their gyms. Some of these people who take photographs for these events, they're all having their bottom line affected. And if you are able to give something to them, I promise you it will make a huge difference. And it will implore them to do the right thing as we are in the process of social distancing. So today we want to give some shine to our good friend at Because Jitsu. Drew Weatherhead has been providing us a lot of good laughs over the years, and he's released some DVDs. I would highly encourage you guys not only to go support his page, most of you already do, but I think it'd be a good show of faith. He's closing down his gym for 2 weeks, which I know is a very tough decision. It's a relatively new gym still. even though it's only been open for a couple of years. Drew famously quit his job to go ahead and pursue this passion. Gives us not only great memes, but also has provided a podcast with our good friend Jamie Kilstein as well. So I would highly implore you guys to go check out. He's got a Reverse Kimura DVD, which I'm actually super excited about, and he's been collaborating with a number of our good friends. So if you guys could do a solid, give him some shine, that would be great. And more importantly, it would let him know that the community who has benefited from his great memes very much shows their appreciation back to him for all of his hard work. That's it. Thank you guys. Try and stay safe. It's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you on the mats.